Today's story is my husband earns $2,800 a month, yet he moved his mother and 4 siblings into our tiny apartment, boldly claiming, "I'll take care of everything." I packed my bags and went back to my parents' house for 2 months, throwing his whole family into chaos. My name is Audrey Davis. I am 28 years old and work as a corporate bookkeeper. My husband, Henry Davis, is 31 and works as a warehouse manager and delivery driver. We have been married for nearly 2 years and don't have children yet. We are currently renting a tiny 400 square foot 1-bedroom duplex in a working-class suburb of Dallas, Texas. The house is small, and our income is modest, so I'm used to living by the rule of living within your means, calculating every penny before I spend it. Henry comes from a large family. His mother is Patricia Patty Davis, 56, from a rural town in Oklahoma. Below Henry are 4 siblings: Kevin, 27, Felix, 24, Anna, 20, and the youngest, Noah, who is only 11. I have always maintained my boundaries, but remained respectful. Whenever we had a little extra at the end of the month, I'd send his mom some money for her medications, and during Thanksgiving and Christmas, I always put together nice gift baskets. I've always believed in the saying, "Choose your battles to keep the peace, as long as everyone is reasonable." It was a Monday afternoon. A cold, dreary drizzle was falling over Dallas, making the roads as slick as grease. After clocking out, I stopped at the local grocery store to buy some ground beef, a carton of eggs, and some potatoes, planning to make a hearty meatloaf for Henry so he could regain his strength after a long shift. I pulled into our driveway a little past 6:10 p.m. As I turned into our narrow alleyway, I saw an unusually large group of people standing in front of our door. I hit the brakes, and my heart dropped into my stomach. Patty was blocking the doorway in a faded purple raincoat. Beside her stood Kevin and Felix, each wearing heavy duffel bags. Anna was holding a large cardboard moving box, while little Noah was pulling a rusty wagon stacked with an old slow cooker, trash bags full of clothes tied with rubber bands, and a bulk box of ramen noodles. Looking at that setup, no one would think they were just dropping by for a visit. They were moving in. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Mom, what are you doing here?" She looked at me without a single word of greeting and bluntly ordered, "We've come to live with you and Henry." "Unlock the door." I stood frozen, looking at the plastic grocery bags in my hands, then at the tiny apartment behind the front door. "Mom, you didn't tell me you were coming. Our place is incredibly cramped. Can you just stay for a few days while we figure things out?" Kevin let out a laugh that sounded like it had thorns in it. "Figure what out?" "We brought everything we own." Felix jerked his chin toward the door. "We're staying here. It's Henry's house, isn't it?" That phrase, *Henry's house*, choked me. This was a rental. We pinched pennies every month just to keep a roof over our heads. Before I could say another word, Patty turned and signaled to the kids. "Go on in, you're getting soaked out here." "I sold the house in Oklahoma. We moved down here to be closer as a family," I jolted. "You sold the house? When?" Anna looked down, her hands gripping the cardboard box tightly. Noah hid behind his sister, his eyes red. Meanwhile, Kevin and Felix were already peering through the windows, calculating where to dump their stuff. Just then, the front door swung open. Henry stepped out, his face still dotted with sweat from the warehouse. Seeing his mother, he was genuinely overjoyed. "Mom, you're really here. Why didn't you call me? I would have picked you up from the Greyhound station." Then, he turned to me, his voice a mix of pleading and stubborn resolve. "Audrey, Mom is going to live with us. I can take care of it." Hearing the words "times I can take care of it" times made my stomach turn ice cold. I knew Henry's take-home pay hovered around $2,800 a month. Our rent and utilities ate up the vast majority of it. Paying for food, gas, and insurance wasn't a motivational slogan you could just shout out. Yet, in front of his mother and brothers, he stood with his back straight, desperate to prove he was the patriarch. Patty pushed the door open and walked in first, acting as if she had owned the place for years. She scanned the tiny room and said in a tone that was sweet, but laced with venom, "With me living here, I'll cook the meals. The daughter-in-law won't have to complain about being tired anymore." Kevin dropped his duffel bag with a heavy thud. Hey, Audrey, where are we sleeping tonight? Felix chimed in. I'm not sleeping on the hard floor, just so you know. Noah mumbled softly. Can I sleep with Henry? Hearing the little boy's voice, my heart ached. But pity couldn't solve the lack of space, the lack of money, and the suffocating sense of entitlement flooding into my home like a flash flood. Henry leaned into my ear. Just bear with it for a few days, Audrey. Now that Mom is here, we'll talk about it later. I looked around. There was our queen bed pushed against the wall. A kitchenette barely big enough for one person to stand in. A bathroom the size of a closet. I imagined the reality. Lining up for the shower, fighting over electrical outlets, cooking meals to feed 7 mouths, and the inevitable nitpicking. Asterisk, why are we eating this? Why did you buy meat? Why are you wasting money? Asterisk. When a marriage turns into a crowded boarding house, dishes are bound to crash. How could human patience survive? I took a deep breath and set the groceries on the counter. I didn't yell, and I didn't cry. I looked straight at Henry, then turned to Patty. Mom, please come in and sit down so you don't catch a cold. But regarding living here, I need to be perfectly clear tonight. Our place is tiny, and our finances are strictly budgeted. I cannot accept everyone moving in permanently like this. The house went dead silent. Patty froze in her tracks, her eyes narrowing into slits. Kevin and Felix looked at each other, their smirks vanishing. Henry stiffened, as if he couldn't believe his wife dared to say such a thing in front of his family. As for me, I knew that, from this exact second, everything had changed. The moment the words "cannot accept everyone moving in" left my mouth, Patty whipped around. Her eyes were no longer those of a mother visiting her son. They were the eyes of a dictator who had just been stripped of her command. Cannot. She emphasized every syllable. What kind of daughter-in-law opens her mouth just to say times cannot asterisk? Who do you think you are to ban a mother from walking into her own son's house? I swallowed hard, trying to maintain basic respect. I am not banning you, Mom. I am just asking for a practical solution. The house is too small, and our financial situation is. Oh, please. Kevin cut me off with a scoff. You're an accountant, Audrey, but you talk like you're destitute. People live in multi-generational homes all the time. Felix glanced at the kitchenette and clicked his tongue. If it's tight, just throw an air mattress on the floor. What does that have to do with finances? He patted his stomach nonchalantly. Anyway, go cook dinner. We drove a long way and I'm starving to death. Patty raised her chin. He's right. When a daughter-in-law sees her husband's family arrive, she should get into the kitchen. Stop standing there, putting on a dramatic act. The command to go cook dinner fell like an executioner's axe. My grocery bags only held enough food for a modest dinner for 2. I looked at Henry. He avoided my gaze, his voice low. Audrey, just let it go for now. Mom is here. We'll figure it out. My heart plummeted. Asterisk let it go times to keep the peace. Asterisk let it go times to maintain family harmony. Asterisk let it go times forever. When you constantly yield, people get used to treating you like a welcome mat. Patty slammed her bag onto a chair and marched straight into our bedroom. Before I could stop her, she yanked open our closet door. It clicked like a declaration of war. She started flipping through the hangers, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Everything in here belongs to my son anyway. You live off his paycheck, yet you act like you're the one paying the bills. My heart pounded so hard my ears were ringing. I wanted to scream about the rent, the groceries, the electric bill, but arguing over money in front of a mother-in-law would instantly brand me as the disrespectful, greedy wife. I quickly calculated the 4 backpacks sitting in the living room. 5 extra people, 3 meals a day. Milk for Noah, college expenses for Anna. Every single number would be piled onto my back. I reminded myself to stay calm. I walked over and gently pushed the closet door shut. Mom, I have a proposal. There is an extended stay motel down the street. Henry and I can help pay a portion for you to stay there. Kevin and Felix can get jobs, and everyone chips in for their own expenses. Patty slapped my hand away so hard my fingertips went numb. Are you trying to teach me how to live? I am his mother. I live where I want. Don't try to pull this motel garbage to kick me out. Kevin crossed his arms. And exactly how much is this portion you're offering? Felix smirked. You control the money, your mouth does the talking. Who's gonna verify that? I turned to Henry. Did you hear them? I offer a solution, and I'm accused of kicking them out. If I stay quiet, I'm expected to endure it. What exactly am I supposed to do? Henry looked panicked. Audrey, please understand. My mom and siblings are here. I can't just let them be homeless. I let out a laugh that sounded more like a choke. We are times renting times this place. I literally just transferred the rent money from our joint account yesterday. You say homeless as if I'm the one pushing them onto the streets. Patty stomped over and pointed a finger right in my face. My son doesn't make a fortune, but he still manages to feed a wife. If you knew your place, you would open your heart, not count the pennies for every meal. Hearing that I was being fed by him felt like a physical slap. I looked her dead in the eye, speaking slowly. I have a full-time job. I support myself. Since I married your son, I have never lived off his dime, Patty sneered. When a woman marries, she follows her husband's family. You obey his rules. You hear me? It sounded like a prison sentence. Kevin and Felix looked at me with expressions that said, asterisk, just give up. Asterisk Noah sat huddled in the corner, clutching a throw pillow. Anna stayed completely silent, her shoulders hunched. Her eyes seemed to beg me not to blow things up, but she lacked the courage to stand by my side. I knew with absolute certainty that if I yielded tonight, tomorrow my closet would be raided, my kitchen would be policed, my bank account would be interrogated, and whenever I reacted, I would be called toxic. I turned to Henry and spoke every word with lethal precision. I respect your mother, but I demand to be respected in return. This apartment cannot hold 7 people. I refuse to carry this burden. Henry's face scrunched up. Audrey, please don't escalate this. You're terrified of your mother getting angry. I interrupted gently, but decisively. But I am suffocating. Who is terrified for me? Silence. I didn't scream. I didn't break down. I quietly pulled my old suitcase from under our bed. The wheels clattered against the vinyl floor. It sounded like my own dignity being dragged away. Patty's eyes bugged out. What do you think you're doing? I unzipped the suitcase, my voice eerily calm. I am going to my parents' house for a few days. I am not abandoning my husband. I am simply leaving a place where I am treated like a stranger. Henry lunged forward and grabbed my wrist. Are you really leaving? I pulled my arm free and looked right through him. I'm leaving, so I don't say things that will make this harder for you. When you actually want to protect your wife, come find me. I grabbed the handle and walked out the door. The Texas rain was still pounding the pavement. Behind me, Patty's icy voice rang out. Go ahead and leave. Let's see if you ever have the face to crawl back to this family. I didn't look back. I gripped my suitcase and stepped off the porch. I felt like I had just pulled myself out of quicksand. I drove to my parents' house in a quiet neighborhood in Richardson. By the time I arrived, it was pitch black. The street felt darker than usual, but the smell of rain mixed with the aroma of my mom's home cooking wafted through the air, making my heart ache. I parked in the driveway. Before I even knocked, my mother, Sarah, opened the door. It was as if she had been waiting. She looked at my suitcase, looked at my face, and didn't ask a single question. She just said, "Come inside, sweetheart. You're soaking wet." I stepped into the house. My feet were freezing. In the kitchen, a pot of homemade chicken noodle soup was simmering on the stove, radiating warmth. Suddenly, my throat closed up. Sometimes, you don't need someone to fight your battles. You just need a place where you're allowed to fall apart. I sat down at the kitchen island and told her everything. I told her about Patty ambushing us with the whole family, the tiny apartment feeling like a pressure cooker, the phrase, my son's house being weaponized against me. I laid out Henry's $2,800 income. I broke down the $1,400 rent, the $300 utility, and internet bills, not even counting car insurance, gas, and groceries. I didn't tell her this to whine. I told her so she would understand. This wasn't me being difficult. It was pure, unadulterated financial suicide, wrapped up in the guise of family duty. My mother sat across from me, stirring her tea slowly. She didn't jump up to curse my in-laws. She just sighed. Oh, honey, one tree doesn't make a forest. It's fine to love your family, but is it love when they demand you carry them until your back breaks? Or is it just exploitation? The word times exploitation times silenced me. I knew my mom didn't want to pour gasoline on the fire. She wanted me to see the situation for what it was. I had only managed a few spoonfuls of soup when my phone buzzed. It was Henry. I stared at the caller ID. My heart twinged, but my hands weren't trembling in a panic like before. I answered. Henry's voice was frantic. Audrey, did you seriously leave? Come back right now. Mom is losing her mind. She says you humiliated her. Just come back. Say you're sorry, and we can move past this. I let out a soft laugh that sounded more like a sigh of exhaustion. You called me, and your very first sentence is about your mother losing her mind. Not, are you okay? Not, did you drive safe in the rain? He went quiet for a few seconds before murmuring, I know you're upset, but just come back to keep the peace. Mom and the kids have nowhere else to go. I looked at my mother sitting across from me. She didn't interject, but her steady gaze gave me an anchor. I spoke slowly and clearly. Henry, I am not divorcing you, but I refuse to be a punching bag, just so everyone else feels comfortable. Do you want me to come back because you love and miss your wife, or because you need a meat shield to absorb your mother's anger? The silence on the line stretched out. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. I'm just so overwhelmed. Please, Audrey, just come back and help me this one time. Asterisk, help me this one time. Asterisk, those 6 words told me everything. He wasn't apologizing for hurting me. He just wanted me to return, so his life would be less complicated. My chest felt as cold as the rain that hit my face earlier. I will talk to you when you realize that our times, marriage, is a real family too, I replied. If you only want me back to take the bullets for you, I can't do it. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but it was the tremor of someone standing her ground, not the tremor of a victim. Less than 10 minutes later, the phone buzzed again. This time, it was Patty. I took a deep breath and answered. I refused to let her think I was hiding. The moment the call connected, she fired off like a machine gun. You think you're so smart. You've barely been married 2 years, and you abandon your home, leaving your mother-in-law standing in the living room like a charity case. Do you have no shame? I kept my voice level. I didn't abandon my home. I came to my parents' house for a few days to decompress. Henry and I are still married. Married to what? She shrieked. A woman who walks out on her husband is trash. Let me tell you right now, if you don't get your behind back here, I am driving straight to your corporate office tomorrow. I'll ask your boss what kind of morals they teach their employees. Hearing her threaten my job made my stomach knot. I worked as an accountant at a respectable firm. All it would take was a screaming woman in the lobby claiming I was an abusive daughter-in-law to get me investigated by HR. But if I bowed down to terrorism now, she would use that threat as a leash for the rest of my life. I replied with cold politeness. I understand you are stressed, but please look at reality. I am a human being. I get exhausted. The apartment is tiny. Our money is tight. You moved 5 people in without a single text message. I couldn't handle the logistics. She let out a mocking laugh. Exhausted? What do you have to be exhausted about? You married into this family. You take on our burdens. A daughter-in-law belongs to the husband's family. I'm telling you to stop playing the victim. My chest ached. I wanted to scream that a daughter-in-law is a human being, not property. But engaging further would only give her ammunition to call me argumentative. I switched to a short, absolute statement. I will only return when Henry is willing to stand up and demand fairness for his wife. If you want to make a scene at my office, go ahead. I will not confess to a crime I didn't commit just to buy fake peace. I hung up and sat frozen. My mom put down her tea, walked over, and draped a blanket over my shoulders. She spoke in a gentle, yet ironclad voice. Audrey, keep your head high and your nose clean. Never let fear force you to trample on your own dignity. But remember, we aren't going to war. We are just building a fence. I nodded. In that moment, I realized I didn't need to defeat anyone. I just needed to not defeat myself. That night, My phone buzzed a few more times. I ignored it. I pulled the covers up to my chin and stared at the familiar ceiling of my childhood bedroom. As the rain slowed to a drizzle, my emotions were a tangled mess. I loved Henry. I was furious with Henry. I was terrified of a public scandal at work, but I was even more terrified of my life becoming a claustrophobic prison, a place where anyone could barge in and rewrite the rules of my existence. I closed my eyes and swore an oath to myself. Asterisk. You only find out who will hold the umbrella for you when the hurricane hits. Asterisk. I had barely drifted off to sleep when the phone vibrated against the nightstand, casting a pale blue glow across the dark room. It wasn't Henry. It wasn't Patty. It was Anna. I sat bolt upright, my heart hammering. The girl almost never called me. Even on my birthday, she would just send a polite, generic text. I swiped to answer. Audrey? Anna's voice was a hoarse whisper, like she was trying to swallow her sobs. Are you awake? I didn't know who else to call. I kept my voice low, afraid of waking my mom, but my anxiety spiked. I'm here. What's going on? Take a deep breath and tell me. Through the receiver, I could hear chaotic yelling in the background. The words were muffled, but the aggressive tone was unmistakable. Then, the sharp times, crash times of something glass-shattering made my spine turn to ice. Anna spoke in fragmented gasps. The house is crazy right now. Mom completely lost it. She's screaming at Henry. She said you leaving destroyed her reputation. She threw a coffee mug. I couldn't stop her. I swallowed hard. I didn't need Anna to paint the picture. In a 400 square foot box packed with people, one person screaming sucks the oxygen out of the room until everyone suffocates. Anna, where is Noah? I asked the question I dreaded most. Anna went silent for 3 seconds. Then, a stifled sob broke through. Noah is crying. He's sitting in the corner hugging his backpack. He's so terrified. He keeps asking me if Audrey hates him now. I keep trying to rock him, but he won't stop shaking. Noah's question felt like a knife dragging across my ribs. The adults were waging war, but the child was the casualty. I spoke in rapid, clear commands. Take Noah into the bathroom, turn on the light, and give him a cup of warm water. If they keep screaming, put his coat on. Walk him over to Mrs. Miller's unit next door and ask if he can sit on her couch because he's having a panic attack. Keep your phone in your hand. Do not let anyone take it. Anna was hyperventilating. I'm scared Mom will scream at me. She told us anyone who walks out that front door is a traitor to the family. I shivered at the word times traitor asterisk. Toxic parents like Patty have a terrifying talent for turning basic right and wrong into a twisted loyalty test. If you set a boundary, you're a traitor. People will surrender their right to a peaceful life just to avoid being branded with that label. You are not betraying anyone, I said firmly. You are protecting a child. Let your mom have her meltdown, but Noah is too little. His nervous system can't handle this. Suddenly, Kevin's voice boomed through the phone. Who are you talking to? Anna, who are you calling? Felix chimed in. She's probably crying to the sister-in-law. Give me the phone. I heard heavy footsteps stomping across the hardwood floor. Anna panicked. Audrey, she whispered, terrified. Go into the bathroom and lock the door, I urged. If they grab the phone, tell them you were calling Henry because you're scared. Protect yourself first. Just as Anna said, okay, a woman's screech pierced the audio so loudly I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Where is she? That arrogant little brat thinks she's a queen. Tomorrow morning, I am driving to her corporate office. I will show her what happens. I will end her career. I stood paralyzed. I wasn't hearing this secondhand anymore. The threats were hitting me like a sledgehammer. My company was small and tight-knit. They liked me because I was professional and drama-free. If a screaming banshee showed up in the lobby, my reputation would be flushed down the drain. My mom, who must have heard me talking, opened my bedroom door. She looked at me with deep concern. I waved a hand to signal I was okay, but my chest felt like it was in a vice. Anna whispered, trembling. Mom said she's dragging Noah to your office tomorrow. She said if you don't come back and beg for forgiveness, she's going to publicly ruin you. I don't know what to do. I closed my eyes for one full second, forcing my brain to switch into survival mode. If I panicked now, I would give Patty exactly what she wanted, my absolute terror-stricken surrender. And from that day forward, the threat of public humiliation would be the leash she used to drag me around. Give an inch, they take a mile. Yield out of fear once, and you are a hostage forever. Where is Henry right now? I asked, my voice suddenly steady. He's sitting on the porch steps in the rain. Mom locked him out. She told him he has to choose. Choose his mother, or choose you. Anna's voice cracked. Henry didn't say anything, and that made Mom go completely psychotic. Hearing that, I felt a wave of pity and rage. Pity that he was trapped in this emotional hostage situation. Rage that he was still allowing me to be the primary target. Listen to me, Anna, I said. Tell Henry I am not coming back just to be a human shock absorber for his mother's rage. If he wants his wife to come home, he has to stand up and speak the truth. He doesn't have to scream or fight. He just has to look his mother in the eye and say, "Do not disrespect my wife." That's it, Anna sobbed. Audrey, if I tell them that, Mom will say you're brainwashing us and tearing the family apart. Tearing a family apart is when you manipulate people for money and control, I replied instantly. Setting boundaries is how you survive living together. A marriage is a partnership. It doesn't mean one person gets to be trampled into the dirt so the other can avoid an awkward conversation. Do you understand? Anna sniffled. Yes, I understand. I softened my voice. You were incredibly brave to call me tonight. I am not angry with you at all. Just keep Noah safe and keep yourself safe. Let the adults suffer the consequences of their own actions. Over the line, I heard Noah crying softly, and Anna shushing him. Shh, Noah, Audrey doesn't hate you. She loves you. My eyes burned with tears. Can you put the phone up to Noah's ear for just a second? Anna shifted the phone. Noah's tiny, broken voice came through. Audrey, are you coming home? I forced my voice to be warm and completely steady. It breaks my heart to hear you cry, buddy. But if I come back tonight, the adults are just going to yell more, and it's going to be scarier. Listen to me. Sit with Anna, drink some water, take deep breaths like you do in gym class. Tomorrow, I am going to fix this. Be a brave boy. Don't be scared. Noah was quiet for a second, then whispered, Okay. Just one word. But it felt like someone had placed a heavy, glowing ember directly into my hands. Anna took the phone back. Audrey, I think Mom is coming to the door. I have to hang up. Lock your screen. Put it in your pocket. If things get violent, run to Mrs. Miller's house. Do not try to be a hero, I commanded. Anna whispered a quick goodbye, and the line went dead. I stood in the dark. The ceiling fan hummed quietly, but my mind was a raging storm. My mom walked in, didn't ask questions, and handed me a mug of hot chamomile tea. She simply said, "They're trying to break you." I nodded, my throat restricted. My mom looked at me for a long time, then spoke with slow, deliberate precision. Audrey, a tree with deep roots doesn't fear the wind. If they want to make a scene, you have to be the calmest person in the room. I sat down on the edge of the bed and gripped the warm mug. My hands were still shaking, but not from the cold. It was the realization that I was facing something much more terrifying than poverty. A family willing to weaponize my professional reputation to force my submission. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat against the headboard, watching the faint glow of the streetlights through the window blinds. I made a promise to myself. If the circus came to town tomorrow, I would not run. But I absolutely would not return to that apartment to be the sacrificial lamb for their dysfunction. I managed to close my eyes for maybe an hour before the sun came up. The clock read 7:20 a.m. I washed my face, pulled my hair into a tight, professional bun, and decided to grab a coffee and head to the office early. I figured if I got a head start, I could avoid letting my personal anxiety mess up my spreadsheets. My mom was in the kitchen, packing a lunch. The smell of bacon and eggs filled the air. She looked up at me. Are you going to work today? I nodded. Yes, I'm not hiding. The more you hide from bullies, the harder they hunt you. Before my mom could respond, a violent, rapid pounding echoed from our front door. It was the kind of aggressive banging that makes you jump out of your skin. The entire quiet suburban street seemed to jolt awake. My spine turned to ice. It was exactly what she had threatened last night. Patty's shrill voice penetrated the walls. "Open this door. Where is the daughter-in-law? Get out here right now." My mom didn't panic. She calmly wiped her hands on a dish towel, walked past me, and headed for the front door. I followed, every muscle in my body pulled as tight as a guitar string, focusing entirely on keeping my breathing even. My mom swung the door open. The scene on our front porch made my heart skip a beat. Patty was standing on the welcome mat, her hand clamped in a death grip around little Noah's wrist. Kevin and Felix were looming right behind her. Anna stood to the side, clutching her backpack, looking like she was going to throw up. Noah was wearing the same t-shirt from yesterday, his eyes swollen shut from crying. Sitting on the wet concrete of the porch was a trash bag full of clothes and the box of ramen noodles. It was a theatrical display designed to prove we had driven them to homelessness. The second Patty saw me, she pointed a furious finger. There's the precious daughter-in-law. Look at her. Married for 2 seconds and she runs back to her mommy, leaving her mother-in-law and her husband's family to starve in the streets. My mom stood tall, her voice cool and authoritative. "Excuse me. You will speak respectfully. This is my property. No one points fingers on my porch, and absolutely no one disrespects my daughter on my property." Patty let out a harsh, mocking cackle. "Oh, so mommy is going to protect her. You really did a great job raising a daughter who spits on her husband's mother. She humiliated my entire family." Kevin pushed his way to the front, his tone a mix of whining and aggression. "Since we got to Texas, Henry has been the only one helping us. Now Audrey runs away. Who are we supposed to rely on? How is Henry supposed to handle this by himself?" Felix joined in, raising his voice so the neighbors whose blinds were twitching could hear. "Audrey acts all high and mighty because she has an office job, but does her paycheck buy her the right to destroy a family?" My chest burned, but I remembered the mantra, asterisk, words are just wind. Screaming back only lowers you to their level. Asterisk, I looked straight at Patty, keeping my tone perfectly polite. "Mom, I came to my parents' house for a few days to let everyone cool off. I am not divorcing Henry, and I did not kick you out." "Didn't kick me out?" Patty roared. "You said the house was too small. You said you couldn't afford it. If that's not kicking me out, what is it?" Then, she violently yanked Noah forward by the shoulder. "Noah, tell them. Tell your grandmother here how terrified you were last night. Tell them." Noah flinched as if he had been struck. His lips were pressed tightly together, his eyes darting around wildly like a trapped bird. My heart shattered. Adults going to war and using a terrified child as a human shield, it was despicable. I took a step forward, dropping my voice to a gentle register. "Noah, honey, you don't have to say a single word. Go inside the house and sit on the couch with Anna. I'll get you some juice." Patty yanked him back, refusing to let go. My mom immediately stepped into the breach, her voice slicing through the tension like a scalpel. "Patty, if you want to have an adult conversation, you speak to the adults. Let go of the child. He has done nothing wrong." Patty glared at her. "Are you trying to lecture me? I am his mother. I will do whatever I want." My mom didn't raise her voice, but her tone dropped to absolute zero. "You are Henry's mother." "Yes, but this is my time's house. I will say it once. You will not scream on my porch, and you will not use a child as a prop for your tantrum. If you cannot behave, I will call the police and have you trespassed." The threat of the police hit like a bucket of ice water. Kevin and Felix exchanged nervous glances. They clearly hadn't expected Sarah Evans to be this ruthless. Patty stalled for a second, then her ego flared up again. "Fine. You think you have the right to kick a mother-in-law off your porch. Your daughter married into my family. She belongs to my family. She obeys my rules." A chill ran through my veins. I looked at her, speaking slowly. "I married your son. I am not a piece of property to be commanded. I respect you as his mother, but I demand basic human respect in return." Patty's eyes bulged. "Respect? You show respect by abandoning your husband." She whipped around to face my mom, pointing a threatening finger. "You keep her here and watch what happens. I am going straight to her corporate office. I will raise hell until they know exactly what she is." My stomach tied itself in knots, but before I could even formulate a response, my mom fired back with lethal calm. "If you want to make a scene at her job, go right ahead. Try it. I am not afraid of you. But let me make something crystal clear. My daughter's reputation is my family's reputation. If you try to drag her name through the mud, I will sue you for defamation so fast your head will spin." Patty choked on her words. Then she pivoted back to me, her voice dropping into a venomous hiss. "You think you've won because you ran to your mommy? Let me tell you right now. If you do this, I do not consider you my daughter-in-law anymore. You are dead to me." I looked at her. It hurt, but I wasn't shaking anymore. I knew the phrase "dead to me" was just the ultimate whip she was cracking to make me cower. But I refused to spend the rest of my life living in terror of losing the approval of a tyrant. I replied, slow and clear. "You have the right to feel however you want, but I have the right to protect my mental health, my finances, and my dignity. Family is supposed to support each other, not degrade each other." Patty opened her mouth to start screaming again, but the sound of tires screeching in the street cut her off. A battered Honda Civic parked haphazardly against the curb. Henry jumped out and ran up the lawn. His uniform was wrinkled, his face was haggard, and his eyes were bloodshot from a total lack of sleep. He froze halfway up the walkway, looking at my mom, looking at his mom, and then looking at me. He looked like a man standing on a landmine, terrified to move an inch. He was panting. "Mom, Audrey, please, stop this. Don't make it a huge scene." Patty instantly seized the opportunity, trying to pull him onto her side. "Look at her, Henry. She abandoned you. I had to drive all the way over here to get her. You are a man. Drag your wife back home right now." Henry looked at me, his eyes begging for mercy. I looked back at him. I had no desire to argue anymore. I just wanted him to wake up. I spoke loud enough for everyone on the porch to hear. "Henry, if you want me to come home, you need to be honest. Am I coming home to be your partner, or am I coming home to be a human shield so your mother stops yelling at you?" Total silence fell over the yard. Even Kevin and Felix stopped their smirking. Noah stopped crying and stared at Henry, waiting for an answer. Henry stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing, unable to force a single word out. My mom placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, not to pull me behind her, but to remind me to stand firm. I took a deep breath. I was done running, but I would not allow myself to be dragged back by threats and humiliation. Henry stared at his boots, his knuckles turning white as he gripped his car keys. I could see the terror radiating off him. He was terrified of his mother's rage, terrified of being labeled a bad son, terrified of the neighborhood gossip if his mother threw a fit. His fears were a mountain, but it had never occurred to him that his wife was carrying a mountain of fear, too. Patty wasn't going to let him think. She barked, "What are you standing there for? Get your wife. I moved my whole life to Texas," and she walks out. "People are going to laugh at me." Kevin chimed in from the back, his voice grating. "Yeah, Henry, if you don't get Audrey to come back, where are we supposed to go? Mom sold the house. Do you expect us to sleep under a bridge? Asterisk, Mom sold the house. Asterisk, they wielded that phrase like a magic wand. Say it, and all opposition was supposed to instantly evaporate. Felix crossed his arms, looking at my parents' nice suburban home with a calculating gaze. "This house is pretty big. Maybe Henry and Audrey should just move in here. Mom takes the apartment, and we don't have to be cramped." Problem solved. It sounded like a suggestion, but it dripped with sarcasm. My mom, who had maintained a diplomat's composure this entire time, suddenly turned to Henry. "Henry, I am not going to talk in circles with you. I am asking you man to man, did you hear my daughter? Does she return to your apartment to be a wife, or does she return to absorb your mother's verbal abuse?" Henry swallowed hard, looking from me to his mother. His lips trembled. Patty exploded. "What kind of insane question is that? A wife goes where her husband is. My son is the boss of his house, and my daughter-in-law does what she's told. My mom looked Patty dead in the eyes. Patty, you want to talk about traditional rules. Let's talk about reality. Their apartment is 400 square feet. Their money is severely limited. Putting 7 adults into a shoebox, how long do you honestly think that peace will last? Patty jutted her chin out. It will last because it has to. A crowded house is a blessed house. My mom gave a single, curt nod, and then dropped a bomb that hit like a bucket of ice water on a grease fire. Fine. If you absolutely insist on everyone living in that apartment, then Henry and Audrey will move in here with me. I can support the 2 of them. If you want to play happy family, you can play it with your 4 children in that tiny rental. Do not expect my daughter to serve as the unpaid maid in a sweatshop. The entire porch went dead quiet. I saw Kevin blink rapidly, unable to process what he just heard. Felix's arrogant smirk vanished instantly. Patty's eyes widened to the size of saucers. Her face turned bright red, as if someone had just snatched a winning lottery ticket out of her hand. She pointed a trembling finger at my mom. You are trying to steal my son. You are wicked. You're telling him to abandon his mother. My mom didn't flinch. I am not stealing anyone. I am simply refusing to let you use the concept of family duty to turn him into an ATM and turn my daughter into an indentured servant. Hearing that, the bridge of my nose stung. There are things you can't say when you're in the trenches of the war. Sometimes you need an outsider's shield to protect you. Henry finally found his voice. It was raspy and broken. Mom, don't talk to Sarah like that. Then he turned fully to his mother. Surprisingly, he wasn't shaking like he usually did. Mom, I am not abandoning you. But you cannot force Audrey to do this anymore. Patty looked like someone had lit a fuse inside her head. You're taking her side? After she embarrassed me? I gave birth to you, and you betray me for her? Little Noah, who had been completely silent, suddenly burst into hysterical sobs. He grabbed Anna's shirt, squeezing his eyes shut, as if expecting the sky to fall. Anna hugged him tight, her lips trembling until they were white. I stepped forward, looking directly at Patty. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise. I don't want to embarrass anyone. I just want a normal marriage. I respect you, but I refuse to force myself into a box where I have to accept being insulted and degraded every single day. Kevin suddenly blurted out, "You keep talking about being degraded. Does your dignity pay the electric bill?" He glanced at his mother, as if asking for permission to be disrespectful. My mom turned her gaze onto Kevin. It was a look sharp enough to cut glass, but her tone remained perfectly composed. Dignity doesn't pay the electric bill, but a man without dignity isn't much of a man at all. We raised our daughter to work hard, earn her own paycheck, and live an honorable life. Do not speak to her with that kind of misogynistic disrespect. Kevin's face flushed purple. He shut his mouth. Seeing that aggression wasn't working, Patty pivoted to her favorite tactic. She clutched her chest and began to hyperventilate. "Fine, you're all so smart. You're trying to kill me." She swayed on her feet, grabbing Noah's shoulder for support, wailing, "Oh, Noah, we've been thrown out on the street. Grandma has nowhere to go." Watching her, I felt profound pity for Noah, but my blood ran cold. I realized she was using perceived frailty as a hostage negotiation tactic. If anyone tried to set a boundary, they were accused of literal murder. My mom stepped forward just half a step, preventing Patty from overacting. "Patty, if you are having a medical emergency, sit down on the bench, and I will call an ambulance right now. But you are not going to fake a heart attack to manipulate my family. No one is throwing you out. We are discussing living arrangements and basic human respect." Patty glared at my mom like she was the devil incarnate. Then she whipped her head toward Henry, grinding out every word. "Choose. Right now, it's me, or it's her." The air grew thick. I could hear my own heartbeat. Henry was standing between the 2 women in his life, the one who gave him life, and the one trying to build a life with him. He physically trembled. But then, he straightened up. His eyes were red, but his voice was firmer than I had ever heard it. "Mom, it's not about abandoning you. I have to prioritize my wife. She is the person I am spending the rest of my life with. I will not let Audrey be pushed so hard that she has to run away again. Patty's jaw dropped. She stared at him in sheer disbelief. Then, she let out a hollow, bitter laugh. Fine. As of today, I do not have an oldest son. She snatched up the trash bag, grabbed Kevin and Felix by the sleeves, and yanked Noah's hand. We are leaving. Let them live in their precious little fantasy world. Anna frantically whispered, Mom, Noah. But Patty was already marching toward Henry's car. Kevin and Felix followed closely, looking furious. Noah kept glancing back over his shoulder, his face streaked with tears, completely bewildered as to why the adults kept dragging him back and forth. Henry took one step after them, then stopped. He looked at me, his mouth opening and closing. I didn't say a word. I just looked back at him, letting him feel the full weight of what it costs to finally stand up. When Patty reached the sidewalk, she turned around and threw one last grenade. Don't you dare come crying to me when you regret this. And then they were gone. The driveway was suddenly incredibly empty. The only sound was the distant hum of morning traffic, and my mom's soft sigh. Henry stood alone on the concrete walkway. His shoulders were slumped, looking like a man who had just lost something massive, even though he knew he had done the right thing. My mom looked at him, her voice softening. Come inside and have a glass of water, Henry. Let everyone cool off. Adults need to leave an exit strategy when they argue. But the exit strategy cannot be walking all over your wife. Henry sat down heavily on one of our porch chairs and buried his face in his hands. I didn't go to comfort him immediately. I let him sit with it. Some lessons can't be taught. They have to be felt in your bones to become permanent. Right at that moment, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text from Anna. Just a few words, but enough to send a shock of adrenaline straight down my spine. Asterisk, Audrey. Mom collapsed. Asterisk. Before I could even process the text, Henry's phone started ringing. He looked at the screen and his face went sheet white. He knew immediately. I turned to my mom. Mom, Henry and I need to go back to the apartment right now. My mom didn't try to stop me. She just grabbed her purse and her car keys with absolute determination. I'm coming with you. I am not letting you two walk into that alone. We drove back to our suburb in the humid, oppressive heat that follows a Texas rainstorm. The roads were still slick, and the morning traffic was chaotic. I sat in the passenger seat of Henry's car. My knuckles were white, but my mind was remarkably clear. I was no longer afraid of the screaming and the insults. I was afraid of them using health and children as weapons to force my surrender. When we pulled up to our apartment complex, I saw a small group of neighbors clustered near our door, whispering with grim faces. A woman from upstairs walked over quickly. Your mother-in-law passed out cold on the sidewalk. Henry's brothers couldn't lift her. The paramedics took her to the local hospital about 10 minutes ago. Henry went completely pale. He threw the car in reverse and sped toward the local general hospital. My mom followed closely behind in her own SUV. When we ran into the ER waiting room, the harsh smell of bleach and antiseptic hit me. I spotted Anna sitting on a plastic chair near the triage desk. Her hair was a mess, her eyes red and puffy. Noah was fast asleep, his head resting heavily on her shoulder, occasionally letting out a little hiccup. Kevin was leaning against the wall, staring blankly into space. Felix was pacing back and forth, muttering angrily under his breath. When Anna saw me, she shot up from her chair like a drowning victim, grabbing a life raft. Audrey, you're here. She immediately broke down into fresh tears. Henry sprinted up to the triage nurse. My mother, Patricia Davis. How is she? Is she okay? He was firing off questions, terrified that one bad word would break him completely. A few minutes later, a doctor walked through the double doors. Family of Patricia Davis? She suffered a severe drop in blood pressure due to extreme emotional distress and dehydration. She is stabilizing now and receiving IV fluids. She needs a calm environment. Please, no more stress. Hearing the word times, stabilizing asterisk, my legs felt a little less like jelly. Henry let out a massive sigh of relief, but tears leaked from his eyes. He turned to look at me, a look filled with relief, blame, and a desperate plea for help. It was a chaotic mix of emotions, proving the internal war tearing him apart. Before anyone could speak, the doors opened, and the nurses wheeled Patty out into an observation bay. She was pale, but her eyes were wide open. The moment she saw Henry, she reached out a weak, trembling hand. "Henry, my boy." Her voice was a raspy whisper. Henry rushed to her side and took her hand. "Mom, I'm here. You scared me to death." Then, Patty turned her head and saw me standing near the curtain. Instantly, the frailty vanished from her eyes, replaced by a gaze as sharp as a nail. She snatched her hand away from Henry. Her voice wasn't a scream, but it dripped with acid. "What is she doing here? Did she come to see if I was dead yet?" I stood perfectly still. My mom stepped forward, speaking softly but firmly. "Patty, you are in a hospital. Save your strength." Patty ignored her, turning her venom back to Henry. "Why did I collapse? Because you chose her. You broke my heart, and then you bring her here to gloat?" Kevin and Felix instantly jumped on the opportunity. Kevin let out a loud, theatrical sigh. "Henry, if Mom dies, how are we supposed to survive?" Felix added casually, "Yeah, this is what happens when people start demanding boundaries. It literally almost killed Mom." I stared at the two of them, refusing to take the bait. Arguing with them here would only turn the hospital into a circus. I turned to the attending nurse and asked a practical question. "Excuse me, what are the discharge instructions? Do we need to pick up any prescriptions?" I used cold, hard reality to drag the conversation out of their emotional manipulation loop. The nurse gave us a few instructions and stepped away. Once the medical staff was gone, Patty seized the moment. She motioned for Henry. "Come closer. I need to talk to you." Henry hesitated, looking back at me. I didn't hold him back. I just gave a slight nod. My mom gently pulled me toward the waiting room chairs, placing her warm, solid hand over mine. "Remember, words are cheap. But you don't buy peace with your dignity." The glass door to the observation bay slid shut. I sat in the hallway with Anna and Noah. Noah would occasionally jerk in his sleep, his eyes darting under his eyelids as if bracing for a scream. I pulled a peppermint out of my purse and handed it to him. "Suck on this. It will help you breathe. The doctors are here. You're safe." Noah looked at me, then at Anna, and finally took the mint. His little hand was shaking. Through the glass, I could hear Patty's voice. It fluctuated, sometimes loud, sometimes a tragic whisper, but every word was designed as a hook. "Henry, listen to me. I barely got anything for the house in Oklahoma. After paying off your father's old debts, there was practically nothing left. I moved to Texas because I had no other options. If you don't take care of me, who will?" Her voice dissolved into dramatic sobs. "I only have you. If you abandon me, I might as well just die." I saw Henry's shoulders slump. "Mom, I'm not abandoning you." Patty immediately cut him off. "If you aren't abandoning me, then make your wife come home and act like a real family. Otherwise, I'm going to end up right back in this hospital, and next time I won't wake up. You choose, your mother's life or your stubborn wife." I closed my eyes. The toxic snare of filial piety was wrapping tightly around his neck. If he resisted, he was practically a murderer. My mom sat next to me, her face unreadable but her eyes dark. She whispered, "Do you see? They use illness to force you to your knees. If you play this game, you will be their hostage for the rest of your life." The glass door slid open. Henry walked out, looking like a man who had just walked through a hurricane. His eyes were bloodshot, his lips pale. He looked at me, his voice a gravelly whisper. "Audrey, please, go home. Mom is so weak. Just go back to the apartment, and she'll calm down." I looked at him for a long, agonizing moment. I didn't say no. I couldn't just say no and walk away. I asked him one quiet, profound question. "Do you want me to come home to be your wife? Or do you want me to come home to be a sedative for your mother?" Henry opened his mouth, but nothing came out. That silence was more painful than any insult. It showed me he was still utterly paralyzed by the fear of being a bad son. From inside the room, Patty called out, her voice exhausted but weaponized. "If she won't come, fine. Send Noah in here. I only need my youngest. Let her do whatever she wants." Hearing that, Noah jumped. clutching Anna's shirt in sheer terror. Instinctively, I stepped forward, placing my body between Noah and the glass door. I didn't touch Patty. I didn't scream. I just spoke loud enough for everyone in the hallway to hear. Noah is a child. Do not use a child to threaten me. Adults deal with adults. Kevin tried to step in. Wow, you think you're pretty tough, huh? My mom cut him off instantly, her voice like cracking ice. Quiet. We are in a hospital. No one is making a scene. If you want to talk, you use logic and reason. If you can't, go wait outside. Anna sat curled up, looking at me with pleading eyes, pleading with me not to leave, but also not to give in. I realized she had lived in the crossfire of this emotional warfare for years. Seeing someone finally stand their ground was the only anchor she had. I turned back to Henry. I spoke slowly, articulating every syllable. I will not return to that apartment because I am being threatened. I will return when you are capable of demanding fairness for your wife. And I will return when your mother stops using her health to hold us hostage. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. But internally, it felt like I had just dropped a 1,000-pound weight off my chest. The hospital hallway was bright. Nurses hurried past. I looked at all the strangers and realized a hard truth. You can be financially broke, but you can never afford to be morally broke. Because if you lack self-respect, a mansion won't bring you peace, let alone a 400-square-foot apartment. That night, the hospital grew quiet. The long corridors emptied out, leaving only the hum of the AC and the lingering smell of sanitizer. My mom told me to go home and get some sleep before work, but I knew that if Anna still had a knot in her stomach, she wouldn't be able to close her eyes. Around 10 p.m., my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Anna, short and terrified. Audrey, can I step outside for a minute? I have something you need to see. I'll wait at the diner across the street from the ER. I looked at my mom. She didn't ask what it was about. She just asked, "Do you want me to come with you?" I shook my head. "Stay here and keep an eye on things. I'll be right back." My mom nodded. "Go. But remember, whatever she tells you, or shows you, get proof. Without proof, it's just gossip. With proof, it's armor." I grabbed my jacket and walked out the automatic doors. The Texas night air was humid, carrying the smell of wet asphalt and car exhaust. The 2-4-hour diner across the street was a greasy spoon flickering neon sign, cheap booths, the clatter of silverware. In the dead of night, every sound was amplified. Anna was sitting in a back booth, facing the wall as if terrified. Someone would spot her. She had a baseball cap pulled down low and her arms wrapped tightly around a canvas tote bag. When she saw me, she practically jumped out of the booth. "Audrey." Her voice was shredded from crying. I sat down and looked her in the eye. "It's okay. Whatever you need to say, say it. But first, are you all right?" Anna offered a miserable, crooked smile and shook her head. She flagged down the waitress. "2 black coffees, please." She turned back to me, whispering, "Drink this, so you stay awake, because I'm shaking so hard I can't even hold a cup." Before I could ask anything, Anna reached into her tote bag and pulled out a manila envelope. She slid it across the sticky table toward me like it was a live grenade. "Audrey, look at this." I couldn't keep it hidden anymore. I opened the envelope. Inside were several photocopied documents. In the top corner was the logo of a title company and a notary stamp. One was a real estate closing disclosure form. The other was a bank transfer receipt with a long string of routing numbers. I scanned the pages, and my eyes slammed into the final line. Asterisk, asterisk. Total cash to seller, $360,000. Asterisk, asterisk. I thought I was hallucinating. I pulled the paper closer to the dim diner lights. The number sat there, cold, indisputable. I heard my own heartbeat thumping in my ears. I didn't feel happy or sad. I felt a profound sense of vertigo. It was the feeling of realizing the solid ground you've been standing on is actually a trapdoor. Anna looked at me, her lips trembling. I snuck into her bag and took pictures of the paperwork on my phone while she was in the bathroom, then printed them at the library. I know it's wrong, but if I didn't do it, Mom was going to bleed Henry dry until he collapsed. I looked up. Are you absolutely sure these are real? Anna nodded frantically. Yes. The notary stamp, the dates, the buyer's name. I checked it 3 times. I flipped back to the signature page. I didn't read it out loud, but the reality hit me like a freight train. Asterisk. We sold the house and have nowhere to go. Asterisk. It was a half-truth. The part she conveniently left out was that she was sitting on over $350,000 in liquid cash. I set the papers down. My hands were freezing. I thought about Patty standing on my mom's porch, clutching little Noah as a prop to cry poverty. I thought about her in the hospital bed, weeping that she had nothing left to guilt-trip her son. I thought about Henry, exhausted and broken, begging me to come back just to keep his destitute mother from having a heart attack. It was all a masterful, calculated performance. She set up the chessboard, and we were the pawns she expected to sacrifice. Anna, I asked, slowly, how much did your mom tell Henry she made from the sale? Anna stared at the table. She told him she only had $40,000 left after paying off Dad's old debts and funeral costs. She said it was basically nothing. I let out a harsh, dry laugh. So your mom isn't lacking a place to live. She's lacking a maid to boss around. Anna burst into tears. She frantically wiped her face with a napkin, terrified of being seen. Audrey, I know it's a horrible thing to say about my own mother, but I can't take it anymore. She screams at Henry like he's a dog. She forces him to choose between you two, and then she uses Noah to manipulate everyone. Noah is so scared. And I'm scared too. I looked at Anna. For the first time, I saw genuine rebellion in this timid girl. It wasn't loud or aggressive, but it was enough to change the entire game. I spoke softly. You did the right thing thinking about Noah. Adults fighting should never use a child as a human shield. Anna took a shaky breath. Audrey, please don't show anyone these papers yet. If Mom finds out I did this, she'll destroy me. I nodded. I understand. Discretion is key right now. We aren't hiding this because we're afraid. We're holding on to it for the right moment. But I cannot let Henry be bled dry like this. The waitress brought over the 2 mugs of black coffee. The steam rose in the cool diner air. It looked so innocent, but my mind was spinning at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I took a small sip, not for the taste, but to ground myself. I looked at Anna, enunciating every word. Listen to me carefully. Do not keep these photos on your phone anymore. Delete them. I have the hard copies. But you have to protect yourself. If your mom asks, you play dumb. You know absolutely nothing. Do not try to fight her alone. Anna nodded, a tear dropping into her coffee mug. Okay, Audrey. I suppressed a heavy sigh. I looked at the $360,000 figure one last time, then neatly folded the papers and slipped them back into the manila envelope. This thin stack of paper was the only sword sharp enough to sever the toxic umbilical cord Patty had wrapped around Henry's neck. Anna leaned across the table, whispering, Audrey, I don't hate my mom, I'm terrified she's going to work Henry into an early grave. She acts like it's a tragedy that she has to raise 4 kids on her own, so she makes Henry carry the entire load. And Kevin and Felix, well, you know them. They just want a free ride. I nodded. I didn't need Anna to badmouth anyone. I had seen enough. I just asked, what about Noah? Does he understand what's going on? Anna shook her head. Noah just knows Mom cries and yells a lot. He's terrified. He just hugs me and asks, Anna, where are we moving to next? Hearing that, my throat tightened. I spoke the words like a vow to myself. I am not going to let Noah be a hostage in this anymore. But to stop it, Henry has to wake up. If he doesn't see the truth, he's going to be her puppet, forever. We sat for a few more minutes in silence. A cold draft from the diner door rustled the napkins on the table. I stood up, unzipped my purse, and carefully slid the manila envelope into the deepest hidden pocket. Anna stood up too, her shoulders hunched like someone carrying a guilty verdict. I reached out and gently squeezed her shoulder. You didn't commit a crime, Anna. The crime is using family as an excuse to financially abuse your own son. Anna looked up at me. Her eyes were red, but the look in them had changed. It was the look of someone who finally had an ally. I walked back to the hospital, my steps slow but incredibly solid. The anxiety and confusion were gone. I understood a fundamental truth. Asterisk. Honesty is the enemy of manipulation. Asterisk. The truth was the only thing powerful enough to drag Henry out of the shadow of his guilt. When I returned to the observation ward, my mom was sitting on the plastic chairs, her posture perfect, holding an unopened bottle of water. She saw me and asked quietly, "Did you talk to Anna?" I gave a single nod. I didn't say anything in the hallway. My mom understood immediately and gently squeezed my arm. Asterisk. Stay calm. Asterisk. Henry was leaning against a pillar near the door to Patty's room. He looked absolutely exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me, he pushed off the wall. "Where did you go? Mom keeps asking me to come in and talk. I'm so drained." Asterisk. I'm so drained. Asterisk. It sounded like a man drowning in a riptide. I looked him straight in the eyes. "I went to talk to Anna. About the reality of your mother moving here. I didn't mention the money. I didn't pull out the envelope. A hospital hallway is full of eyes and ears. Pulling out evidence here would just trigger a screaming match." The door to the room slid open. Patty was sitting propped up on pillows. The color had returned to her face. When she saw me, she didn't instantly start screaming. She looked me up and down, then let out a long, theatrical sigh. "Audrey, I was hot-headed last night. I said things I shouldn't have. Let bygones be bygones." I stood perfectly still. Whenever Patty said times "let bygones be bygones" asterisk, it was always a setup for a trap. My mom stood up and walked over to stand right beside me. She didn't interject, but her presence was like a brick wall. Patty turned her attention to Henry, her voice dripping with honey. "Henry, my son, I've thought about it. I won't force your wife anymore. But I really am out of options. I barely got anything for that house. I'm getting older. I couldn't survive in Oklahoma by myself." Henry blinked, hesitating. He grasped at her words like a life preserver. "Mom, exactly how much do you have left?" Patty spoke slowly, her tone incredibly convincing. 40,000. That's it. After the bank took their cut, and paying off the loans, and the funeral bills for your father. That's all that's left. I kept it a secret because I didn't want you to worry." She pressed a hand to her chest, as if she might faint again. I heard that number, and my face remained a mask of stone. I saw exactly what she was doing. She was laying the groundwork so that if anyone refused to house her, they would bear the guilt of throwing an impoverished widow onto the streets. Henry looked at me, pure panic in his eyes. He was begging me to believe the lie so he wouldn't have to face the truth. Right on cue, Patty played the martyr card. "You can be mad at me, Audrey, but I'm sick. Who knows how many days I have left? Henry, just bring your wife home so I can have some peace. I don't want to die feeling like I'm a burden to my own son." My mom cleared her throat, her voice carrying just enough authority to slice the tension. "Patty, you are in a hospital. Let's communicate clearly, and let's leave the dramatic talk of dying out of it." Patty immediately shifted gears, her voice quivering with fake tears. "Am I being dramatic? My heart is weak. I already collapsed once. If it happens again, I might not wake up. Henry, you choose. Me or her. If you want me to die, just say it." Henry froze. His shoulders collapsed under the invisible weight. He mumbled, "Mom, please don't say that." He shot me another desperate look, the look of a man begging his wife to throw herself on the grenade to save him from looking bad. I took a massive breath. I wasn't going to let him choose between his mother's life and his wife's life. I was going to force him to choose reality. I asked Henry, my voice perfectly level. "You heard the number your mother just gave you. Now, let me ask you, if I come back to that apartment tonight, am I returning because we are building a marriage, or am I returning because you are terrified of being called a bad son?" Henry opened his mouth, then closed it. Patty tried to interject, but my mom simply raised her hand. "Let him answer." Henry stared at the glossy linoleum floor. His lips were clamped shut. I didn't push him. Sometimes you have to let the silence force a man to hear his own conscience. Realizing Henry wasn't going to fold, Patty aimed her guns back at me. Her voice was soft, but lethal. Audrey, you are a woman. If you love your husband, you know how to compromise. I promise you, if you just come back and keep the peace, everyone will be happy. I looked at her. Compromising to keep a home peaceful is one thing. Compromising so people learn they can walk all over you is another. That's not peace. That's surrender. I turned back to Henry. I will not return out of fear. And I will not watch you drown in a manufactured guilt trip. Patty's face paled slightly, but she clung to her narrative. Manufactured? I am telling the truth. I have exactly $40,000 to my name. I have to feed Noah. I have to pay for Anna's school. I am not an evil person. She started gasping for air, closing her eyes as if the heart attack was returning. Right at that moment, Kevin and Felix walked into the room. They must have heard the commotion. Kevin rushed to the bed, playing the devoted son. Mom, are you okay? Henry, tell Audrey to leave. Mom is too weak for this. Felix stood near the door, a smirk playing on his lips, waiting to see who would crack first. I looked at the two of them, then at my mom. I knew that if I pulled out the manila envelope right now, Kevin and Felix would snatch it, scream that I was trying to steal their mother's money, and turn the situation into a brawl. Truth is a cure, but administered incorrectly, it becomes poison. I turned to Henry. Henry, I have something you need to see. But I am only going to show it to you when you are ready to look reality in the face, and when we have a witness so no one can twist the story. I didn't say the words Times, bank statement Times, or Times closing disclosure asterisk. I just laid the bait. Henry looked up, his bloodshot eyes widening. What do you have? I looked at my mom, then looked out into the hallway. Anna was hiding behind Kevin, her face ashen. I spoke loud and clear. Anna, come in here, stand next to me. Anna flinched violently. Kevin spun around. What do you want with her? Felix reached out to grab Anna's arm, but my mom stepped forward, her voice booming with sudden authority. Do not lay a hand on her. Trembling, Anna walked into the room and stood by my side. I noticed little Noah peeking his head around the doorframe, looking confused. I gave Anna a hand signal. She nodded, walked over, and gently led Noah back out to the waiting room chairs so he wouldn't have to witness the impending explosion. Anna came back and stood exactly where I told her to. Patty glared at Anna. I could see the gears turning in her head, realizing this had something to do with her daughter. I looked at Henry one last time. If the truth proves that your mother is not destitute, are you man enough to demand fairness for your wife? Henry swallowed audibly. He gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. It was the first time he had agreed with me, without adding a caveat about keeping the peace. I unzipped my purse. My hands were perfectly steady. I pulled out the manila envelope. I didn't hand it to Patty. I handed it directly to Henry. Read it, I said. Read every word, and then we will talk. Patty sat bolt upright like she had been hit by a taser. What is that? What lies are you showing him? She lunged forward, trying to snatch the envelope out of Henry's hands. But Henry, operating on pure reflex, yanked his hands back. It was the first time in his life he had dodged his mother. Kevin, standing near the door, turned pale. Felix lost his smirk entirely. Anna stood perfectly still, her hands twisted into knots, terrified to cry. Henry stared at the papers. His voice choked in his throat. Mom, you told me you had $40,000 left. What? What is this? He pointed at the paper, his finger shaking, but his voice was no longer begging. You sold the house for $360,000. And you told me you were homeless. Patty slammed her hand against the hospital mattress. Her face cycled through 3 different shades of red. You believe your wife's fake papers over your own mother? She's trying to steal from me. I told you, a woman who goes after her mother-in-law's money is cursed. I felt my chest heat up at the word Times steal asterisk, but I didn't engage in a shouting match. I looked at my mom. She gave a microscopic shake of her head. Asterisk, let Henry handle this. Asterisk, Henry took a massive, shaky breath. He looked his mother dead in the eye, and for the first time, he spoke from the gut. Mom, I don't care where the money is, but you have absolutely no right to sit on $350,000 while forcing me to pay for 5 extra people on a warehouse salary. You have no right to use fainting spells to blackmail me into sacrificing my marriage. Patty's eyes bulged. Are you calling me a liar? My mom stepped in, her tone perfectly even. Patty, no one is calling you a liar. We are saying that the way you operate is destroying your son's mental health and degrading his wife. You claim to love your children, but love does not involve public humiliation. Kevin stepped forward, his voice a low growl. Henry, don't listen to them. Mom did this to protect us. Felix jumped in to play defense. Yeah, Mom was just trying to secure your future, man. I looked at the two brothers. To secure Henry's future, or to ensure you two didn't have to get jobs. The question hung in the air like a guillotine. Felix's face contorted in anger. Henry whipped his head toward his brothers. He didn't yell, but the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Kevin, Felix, did you two know about the money? Kevin blinked rapidly, opening and closing his mouth like a fish. Felix looked away and muttered, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't see any paperwork. Suddenly, Anna's voice broke the silence. It was shaking, but it was loud. They both knew. She ducked her head immediately, bracing for impact. I heard Mom telling them. She said they couldn't let Henry find out. The room froze solid. Henry looked at Anna, then at his two brothers. His eyes flooded with red. The betrayal in his gaze was deeper than anything Patty could have inflicted. He realized he wasn't just being manipulated by his mother. His own brothers were perfectly happy to watch him drown in debt so they could live rent-free. Henry let out a hollow, agonizing laugh, so the whole family knew. I was the only idiot. He swallowed hard. I bust my ass at the warehouse for 10 hours a day. I come home and get screamed at by my mother. I get treated like a wallet by my brothers. And then, I drag my wife into this meat grinder to suffer with me. I thought I was being a good son. I was just being an ATM, Patty shrieked. How dare you speak to me like that? I gave you life. You ungrateful bastard. Henry looked at her, his eyes wet, but his spine made of steel. I am grateful for my life, Mom, but I refuse to let you smash my plate, and my wife's plate, onto the floor. Patty started hyperventilating, grabbing her chest. Kevin lunged forward. Mom, just breathe. Felix glared at Henry. Look what you did. You're giving her another heart attack. My mom cut through the theater instantly. If she is experiencing chest pains, I will press the call button for the crash team immediately. But you are not going to use a medical emergency as an off switch for accountability. My mom looked at me. Audrey, go get the triage nurse to check her vitals. I stepped into the hallway and calmly flagged down a nurse. I didn't panic. I followed the procedure. When the nurse came in and hooked Patty up to the blood pressure monitor, Patty was forced to drop the act. She just lay there, breathing heavily, glaring at the ceiling. Henry walked over to the hospital window, staring out at the parking lot. He spoke to the glass, as if talking to himself. My whole life, I did whatever Mom said. I was terrified of being a bad son, but today I realized, if being a good son means destroying my wife and turning myself into a coward, then that version of loyalty is toxic. I didn't walk over to comfort him. I let him stand on his own 2 feet. He had finally stood up, not because I pulled him, and not because his mother pushed him, but because the truth demanded it. The nurse checked the monitor, confirmed Patty's vitals were perfectly stable, and left the room. Patty turned her head, her voice venomous and cold. Fine, you're all so brilliant. From now on, consider yourselves dead to me. I raised a snake in my own house. Henry turned around. He spoke slowly, laying down the new law of the land. You have the right to be angry, Mom, but you do not have the right to smear Audrey's name ever again. If you need help finding an apartment, I will help you, but you are not moving into our place. Audrey will not be your maid. She will not be insulted, and she will not be threatened. I am done. When I heard the words times I am done asterisk, a massive lump formed in my throat. Not because I had won, but because my husband had finally said the words he should have said on our front porch 2 days ago. In that hospital room, there were no more fake smiles, no more victim playing, just the stark, brutal reality of the paperwork sitting on the mattress. And the weight of that reality shifted the entire power dynamic of the family. Wednesday morning. The hospital was chaotic. Doctors calling names, gurneys rolling over the linoleum, the exhausted sighs of families in the waiting room. It was a stressful symphony that makes people easily irritated and emotionally fragile. I bought 2 cartons of milk and a soft pastry from the cafeteria for little Noah. I had Anna take him out to the hallway chairs to eat. A hungry child is a scared child, and a scared child gives toxic adults an excuse to point a finger and say, "Asterisk, see what you did?" Asterisk. My mom pulled me to the side of the hallway, her voice a low murmur. "Let Henry handle the talking today. If you jump in, they'll just accuse you of pulling his strings." I nodded. Today was the day Henry had to take the steering wheel. Nobody could drive this car for him. Inside the hospital room, Patty was facing the wall. She wasn't crying or throwing a tantrum like the days before, but her silence was heavy and calculated. Kevin and Felix stood by the door with their arms crossed, their faces sullen, waiting for someone to give them a command. It was glaringly obvious they weren't afraid for their mother. They were afraid of losing their free ride. Henry pulled up a chair and sat down facing his mother's back. He didn't beg, and he didn't kneel. He spoke like a man reading a contract, his voice slightly raspy, but infinitely stronger than the night before. "Mom, I'm going to say this once so everything is perfectly clear. You are not moving into our apartment. It's too small. Audrey and I can barely breathe in there, and adding more people will only cause a disaster." He paused for a second, keeping his eyes fixed on her. "I will help you find a rental apartment nearby. I will send you $600 a month to help out. I am telling you this up front, so you can budget. The rest of your expenses, food, utilities, your medications you will pay for out of the $360,000 you made from selling the house. I cannot carry the whole load." Kevin scoffed loudly. $600? You sound like you're giving us charity." Henry turned his head slowly and looked at Kevin with absolute calm. "Kevin, you are a 27-year-old man. If you want more money, get a job and earn it. I am not subsidizing your life anymore." Felix let out a sarcastic laugh. "Easy for you to say. Where are we supposed to find jobs down here?" Henry gave a short, sharp reply. "If it's not easy, then you better start applying today." "You don't work, you don't eat," isn't just a motivational quote on a poster. Patty finally rolled over. Her face was as cold as a block of ice. "Are you lecturing your mother? You bring your wife in here and orchestrate this whole scheme to divide the family. I have my own money, and I have the right to keep it. I have the right to live with my son." Henry didn't flinch. "You have the right to keep your money, Mom. But you do not have the right to use your wealth to force me and my wife to live under your dictatorship. If you want to live near me, that's fine. But living times near times me is very different from living times with times me and controlling everything." Patty let out a dry, hacking laugh. "Controlling? I was trying to take care of you, and you call it controlling." My mom, standing by the door, spoke just loud enough to be heard. "Patty, when someone takes care of you, you say thank you. When someone takes care of you by screaming, insulting your wife, and threatening your career, that's called tyranny." She looked Patty dead in the eyes. My daughter did not get married to become a punching bag. Patty glared at my mom, her pride deeply wounded. But because they were in a hospital with nurses walking past the open door, she couldn't launch into a full-scale screaming fit. Instead, she turned back to Henry, breathing heavily. "I raised 4 kids by myself. I suffered. What is wrong with keeping a nest egg for my old age?" "There is nothing wrong with having a nest egg," Henry replied firmly. "But your suffering is not an excuse to make everyone else suffer. Anna is going to stay in school, and she will get a part-time job to help you out, but she will not be forced to drop out to become your servant. And Noah will be enrolled in an elementary school near your new apartment. Absolutely no one is allowed to use him as a pawn to threaten anyone ever again." Hearing Noah's name, my throat constricted. I glanced out the window into the hallway. The little boy was drinking his milk, his eyes still wide with anxiety. Anna was sitting next to him, rubbing his back soothingly. That poor 20-year-old girl had endured so much more than anyone realized, simply because she didn't know how to fight back. Kevin suddenly slammed his hand against the wall. You sound like a saint, Henry. If Mom gets her own place, who is going to cook for her? Who is going to do her laundry? Are you expecting her to do everything herself? Henry looked at his brother, enunciating every word. If Mom can do it, she does it. If she can't, you times do it. You live with her. Don't ask me. Felix tried to deflect the responsibility onto me. What about Audrey? She's the daughter-in-law. Isn't she supposed to help? Before I could even open my mouth, Henry shut him down. Audrey will help when she wants to, out of respect, not out of forced obligation. Do not try to drag my wife into your blame games. Felix's face went rigid. Kevin turned away, muttering profanities under his breath, but didn't dare speak up again. I looked at Henry and saw how hard he was flexing his jaw. He was bracing himself, fighting to ensure the toxic guilt of being a bad son didn't drag him back down into the abyss. Patty's tone suddenly shifted. It became suspiciously soft and vulnerable. Henry, I'm getting old. I'm scared to live alone. I just wanted to be near you. Henry exhaled, his voice losing its harshness but retaining its boundary. I will help you find a place nearby. I will drive you to view apartments. I will come visit you. But you cannot demand that Audrey live with you. You cannot search her belongings, you cannot interrogate her about her paycheck, and you cannot use abusive language. Every time you do that, you push me further away. When she heard times you push me further away, Patty froze. She probably hadn't expected her son to be capable of such brutal honesty. She pressed her lips together. Her eyes were red, but no tears fell. The silence in the room wasn't the silence of authority. It was the silence of defeat. My mom took half a step forward, delivering the final verdict. All right. Everyone knows their place. Patty, use your money wisely. Henry, help your mother within your means. And as for Audrey, no one in this room has the right to disrespect her ever again. Hard times test a family's character. If we want peace, we have to enforce strict boundaries. Henry nodded. He looked toward the hallway. Anna, do you have anything you want to say? Anna jolted in her chair. She walked to the doorway and spoke in a tiny, trembling whisper. I just want everyone to stop screaming around Noah. He's terrified. Henry looked directly at his mother. You hear that, Mom? Keep Noah out of adult arguments. Patty didn't answer. She pulled the hospital blanket up to her chin and turned her face toward the window, but this time, I didn't feel the crushing weight of her manipulation. I felt a new order taking root in the family, shaky and painful, but real. I walked out into the hallway. Noah had finished his milk. He looked up at me and asked in a tiny voice, Audrey, do I have to sleep in a strange place again tonight? I didn't make him a promise I couldn't keep. I just ruffled his hair and told him the one thing I knew was true. You are going to have a real bed, in a real room, and no one is going to yell at you anymore. A warm breeze blew through the open window at the end of the hall. It made me realize that boundaries are exactly like windows. Open them correctly, and the house gets fresh air. Nail them shut, and you suffocate. But if you let someone else rip them off the hinges, the storm will freeze you to the bone. I took a half day off work to drive Henry back to the apartment, to shower and change clothes before returning to the hospital. He was exhausted, his eyes deeply sunken, but at least he had finally spoken the truth. Right before I left my parents' house, my mom gave me a final warning. Listen to me. When you establish a hard rule, toxic people will try to break it by using public opinion. Do not let your guard down. I didn't think her prediction would come true so fast. Around 11 a.m., I was sitting at my desk at work, auditing a spreadsheet, when my cell phone buzzed. It was an unsaved number, but the caller ID flagged it as Aunt Brenda, Henry's aunt from Oklahoma. I paused. I almost never spoke to his extended family, because every conversation eventually devolved into them, asking when I was going to get pregnant. I answered the phone politely. Hello, Aunt Brenda. She didn't bother with small talk. Her tone was a long, dragging drawl, a mix of fake pity and intense interrogation. Audrey? Lord, I heard you are causing an absolute hurricane down there. Your mother-in-law is lying in a hospital bed, and I hear you're waving legal documents in her face, trying to steal her money. My heart stopped for a second. I kept my voice perfectly calm. Excuse me, who told you that? Aunt Brenda lowered her voice like she was revealing state secrets. Oh, everybody is talking about it. They say the daughter-in-law got her hands on the real estate papers and is blackmailing Henry into abandoning his mother. Let me give you some advice, honey. A smart wife knows when to back down. Do not touch your mother-in-law's money. My throat burned. I didn't engage in an argument. I gave a short, clipped response. I appreciate your concern, Aunt Brenda, but whoever is feeding you that information is lying. Then, I hung up the phone. I knew that trying to defend myself to extended family over the phone would just be spun into Audrey was screaming at me. I sat rigid in my office chair. The numbers on my spreadsheet blurred. The rumor mill had already reached Oklahoma. That meant someone was actively orchestrating a smear campaign. I highly doubted Patty, laying in a hospital bed attached to an IV, was organizing a mass communication strategy. So who was it? Before I could even finish the thought, my phone buzzed again. This time it was an anonymous text message from a burner number. *A daughter-in-law who tries to steal an old widow's money is going to burn in hell. Watch your back. *. A cold chill ran down my spine. This wasn't just random gossip. This was a calculated, dirty tactic to attack my character until I panicked and surrendered. I immediately took a screenshot of the text and saved it. My mom had taught me well. Save the evidence. At lunchtime, I drove back to the hospital. As I approached the observation wing, I saw Kevin standing in the hallway, holding his smartphone up, panning it back and forth. When he saw me, he immediately dropped his phone to his side, but his eyes darted around like a thief who had just been caught. I didn't confront him. I walked into the room and greeted Patty with standard politeness. "How are you feeling today?" Patty was sitting up. The pale, frail act was gone, replaced by a gaze sharper than a knife. She didn't answer my question. She looked at Henry and spoke loudly, ensuring her voice carried into the hallway. "Look at her, Henry. She waltzes in here acting like an angel. Yesterday, she was waving documents in my face and threatening me, and today she acts like nothing happened." Henry looked at me, his eyes wide, terrified I was going to explode. I didn't explode. I looked directly at Patty, my voice steady and firm. "I threatened you. Tell me exactly which word I used to threaten you." I gave Henry a piece of paper so he could see the reality of his own life. "I haven't asked for a single dime of your money." Patty let out a harsh laugh. "You didn't ask for it, but you're holding the paperwork." "Holding the paperwork means you have a motive. A woman who reaches into her mother-in-law's purse is going to face karma." The word times karma times made my face turn to stone. It was obvious she had abandoned all logic and was resorting to curses. Right on cue, Kevin strolled into the room, putting on a sickeningly fake, friendly voice. "Hey, Audrey, don't get so worked up. I was just taking a little video to send to the family group chat so the aunts and uncles know Mom is okay." He smirked, clearly trying to provoke a reaction. I instantly understood the game. If I raised my voice, the video would show the abusive daughter-in-law screaming at a sick old woman. If I tried to grab his phone, I would be physically attacking her brother-in-law. Just 10 seconds of out-of-context video is enough to destroy a reputation forever. I turned to Henry and spoke clearly. "Did you know Aunt Brenda called me this morning? The entire extended family in Oklahoma has already been fed a story that I am trying to extort your mother." I looked back at Kevin and Felix. Who recorded the video? Who sent the texts? Who edited the story? Felix leaned against the wall and shrugged. Who edited what? "People just call it like they see it. You're being paranoid." I nodded slowly. People call it like they see it. It sounded so innocent, but it was the perfect cover for a character assassination. My mom walked into the room right at that moment. She didn't engage in a shouting match. She stood next to me and spoke with absolute authority. "If anyone is recording videos, editing them, and distributing false, defamatory statements, they will be facing a civil lawsuit for libel and harassment. Family gossip is not a legal defense for defamation." Patty glared at my mom with pure hatred. "Are you threatening my family?" My mom gave a curt reply. "I am not threatening." I am explaining the law. Everyone operates within the boundaries of the law. Anna stepped forward, her hands gripping the hem of her shirt. She looked terrified, but she gently pulled my sleeve, drawing me out into the hallway. She whispered frantically, "Audrey, Kevin was recording you earlier when you were talking to Mom, and Felix told him to cut out the part where you stayed quiet, so it just looks like you were aggressively challenging her." I heard them talking. I'm so scared. I looked at Anna, my heart sinking. So it wasn't just rumors, they were actively fabricating evidence. I asked her, "Did you see who they sent it to?" Anna nodded, her voice barely a squeak. "I saw Kevin post it in the massive family Facebook group. I didn't see the exact names, but it went to all the aunts and uncles." I walked back into the room and went straight to Henry. He was standing completely still, his fists clenched. I could see the fury boiling inside him, but it was the fury of a man who had just woken up only to realize he was still trapped in a nightmare. "Henry," I said, with absolute finality, "we are not going to let them use a Facebook smear campaign to tear down the boundaries we just built. If we stay quiet today, tomorrow they will convince the world that I am a criminal, and you will be dragged right back into the cycle of defending your abusive wife." Henry swallowed hard. "What do you want to do?" I looked him in the eye. "We are going to settle this in a public, neutral setting, with an official mediator, with the paperwork on the table. We are not doing this in a hospital room where it can be chopped up into a viral video." My mom nodded in agreement. "I'll arrange a room at the local community center with a neutral mediator. We will lay everything out on the table once and for all. Anyone who is lying or editing videos will be exposed in the sunlight." Hearing the words Times Community Center Times and Times Mediator asterisk, Patty sat up violently. "You're going to drag our private family business in front of strangers? My money is my business. Why would you humiliate us like this?" I looked at her, entirely dropping the respectful mom I had used since the wedding. "Patty, I am not humiliating anyone. I am refusing to let you humiliate Times Me asterisk. You have your money, and that is your right. But you do not have the right to turn me into a gold-digging villain in front of your entire extended family." The room went dead silent. Kevin's eyes went wide. Felix frowned. Patty's mouth hung open as if I had just thrown a bucket of ice water in her face. I knew that dropping the title Mom was a massive boundary shift, and toxic people absolutely hate it when you stop playing by their traditional rules. Patty ground her teeth together. You dare call me by my first name?" I didn't back down an inch. "When you treated me like a daughter-in-law, I gave you the respect you deserved. But when you curse me with karma, and let your sons spread rumors that I am trying to rob you, you voided that relationship." Henry stepped between us, his voice deep and rigid. "Mom, stop. I already told you. If anyone insults Audrey again, I am walking away. This afternoon, I will drive you to look at a new apartment. Tomorrow morning, we will meet at the community center with Sarah, Anna, and a mediator. We will put everything on the record. If you want peace, it has to be built on the truth." Patty stared at her son, her eyes burning like hot coals. She turned her glare onto Kevin and Felix, her voice freezing cold. "Fine. You all think you're so smart. We will see who wins this." I walked out into the hallway. Little Noah was sitting on the floor, his knees pulled up to his chest, staring at the linoleum. I crouched down to his eye level and handed him a cold bottle of water. "Drink this, buddy. The adults are just talking. Don't be scared." Noah looked up, his eyes glassy with unshed tears. He mumbled, "I just want a quiet place to sleep, Audrey." I gently squeezed his shoulder. I didn't promise him the moon, I just told him the absolute truth. It will be quiet soon. But to make things quiet, people have to tell the truth. Remember what your teacher says. If you don't do anything wrong, you don't have to be afraid of the truth. Noah gave a tiny, hesitant nod. I stood up, my resolve hardening into diamond. They wanted to play dirty, anonymous games. I wasn't going to fight them in the mud. I was going to turn on the floodlights. Because the moment you drag toxic behavior into the light of day, with witnesses and documentation, the people who thrive on twisting the truth end up choking on their own lies. That afternoon, after the doctor officially discharged her, Henry ran back and forth handling the billing and paperwork. I didn't get involved. I just sat in the waiting room with Noah, making sure he had some snacks and water. Anna quietly packed her mother's belongings into a duffel bag, her face pale as a ghost from severe sleep deprivation. Kevin and Felix stood out in the hallway, whispering furiously to each other, occasionally shooting me venomous glares while trying to figure out their next move. When we finally walked out of the hospital, the Texas sun was brutally hot. Henry had managed to secure a one-bedroom apartment in a slightly older complex just a few miles away. It wasn't a luxury build, but it was clean, had a decent kitchen, and a private bathroom. As I listened to Henry negotiate the deposit with the landlord over the phone, I felt a twinge of pride. At least he was finally viewing life through the lens of actual mathematics, not the delusional ego of asterisk, I can take care of it. Asterisk, we needed to swing by our tiny duplex to grab the rest of their luggage. When I unlocked our front door, the atmosphere inside felt immediately suffocating. The house was darker than usual because the blinds were drawn. As soon as I stepped inside, I locked eyes with Patty. She was sitting on a plastic folding chair in the middle of our cramped living room. Her back was ramrod straight, and she was lazily fanning herself with a junk mail flyer. There was absolutely zero trace of the frail, dying woman from the hospital bed. Her eyes locked onto me like a sniper. "Henry," she said, her voice a slow, deliberate drawl that hung in the stagnant air. "So, you're really throwing me into some cheap rental." Henry dropped a duffel bag onto the floor, trying to maintain his composure. "Yes, Mom. I told you. Living together in this tiny box is impossible. I rented a place near the hospital. It'll be comfortable for you." Kevin, leaning against the kitchen counter, scoffed. "You make it sound so noble, Henry. Mom literally just got out of a hospital bed, and you're evicting her." Felix chimed in, his voice sharp and mocking. "Yeah, and who's going to take care of her if she has another heart episode? Who's going to watch her?" Patty looked at her two younger sons, visibly feeding off their instigation. She slowly turned her gaze back to Henry, her eyes widening in theatrical outrage. "Do you hear them? I gave birth to you, and the moment I get weak, you kick me out onto the street. And for who? For times her asterisk." She jabbed a finger directly at me. I stood by the doorway, refusing to utter a single word. I knew exactly what they were doing. They were baiting me, waiting for me to snap so they could play the victim. But Patty wasn't going to let me remain a silent observer. She aimed directly at the one thing she knew I valued: my reputation. "What are you standing there for?" she barked, throwing the flyer onto the floor. "You think you're so brilliant. You pull out a piece of paper, you broadcast to the whole damn family that I have money, and you brainwash my son. You think you've won." I looked at her, my voice eerily calm. "I am not brainwashing anyone. I am simply refusing to let you destroy my character. How you spend your money is your business. But you do not have the right to use me as your scapegoat." Before I even finished my sentence, Kevin let out a harsh laugh. "Scapegoat? If you're so terrified of losing face, maybe you should have learned how to be an obedient wife." Felix piled on. "Exactly. When you marry a guy, you marry his family. You follow his lead. You don't go running to your mommy every time things get tough." My chest felt like it was filling with boiling water, but I clenched my fists and reminded myself, asterisk, arguing with them is walking straight into a wood chipper. Asterisk. I turned to Henry, keeping my voice low but razor sharp. "Henry, do not let them hijack this. We are here to get their bags and execute the plan." Henry nodded. He looked at his mother. "Mom, I told you. I will send you money every month. I am still fulfilling my responsibilities, but you are not allowed to insult Audrey anymore." The second those words left his mouth, Patty exploded. The plastic chair screeched violently against the floor as she shot up. She marched right up to Henry. She was so close I could see the veins bulging in her neck. "You're taking her side?" she screamed. "You dare tell your mother what she can and cannot do?" Henry stood his ground, his voice shaking but refusing to break. "I am not telling you what to do. I am reminding you that Audrey is my wife." Patty let out a sound of pure disgust. "Wife? Your wife is more important than your mother?" And then, it happened. Asterisk, smack. Asterisk, The sound of the slap was a dry, hollow crack that echoed off the cheap drywall. I stood paralyzed. A dark red handprint instantly materialized on Henry's cheek. He physically recoiled from the force of the blow. He squeezed his eyes shut for a fraction of a second, then opened them, staring at his mother in utter disbelief, as if his brain couldn't process what had just occurred. Anna let out a strangled gasp. "Mom!" She instantly grabbed Noah and pulled him backward toward the hallway. Noah burst into hysterical tears, the sound of his crying shattering the claustrophobic tension of the room. Kevin and Felix froze, but only for a split second. Then, Felix threw gasoline on the fire. "You deserved that. You're completely out of line." Kevin nodded vigorously. "Yeah, you disrespected Mom so much, you forced her to do it." My blood ran completely cold, not because of the physical violence, but because I suddenly realized the horrifying truth. In this family, physical abuse was considered perfectly acceptable as long as it was used to enforce submission. Henry slowly raised a hand to his burning cheek. He let out a long, ragged exhale. For a second, I thought he was going to drop his head and apologize, just like he always did. He didn't. He took a half step forward. He stood up taller, and the pleading tone vanished from his voice entirely. "You can hit me all you want, Mom," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "But do not think for 1 second you can use violence to force me to sell out my wife." Patty's eyes went completely wild. "Are you threatening me?" She violently pivoted toward me, raising her hand as if she was going to unleash her rage on my face. "This is your fault. You poisoned him." Before I even had time to react, Henry spun around and shoved me behind him. His thick, muscular arm barred across my chest like an iron gate. He spoke with absolute finality. Every word hit the floor like a lead weight. "Do not lay a finger on my wife." The entire apartment plunged into a suffocating silence. Even Noah's crying hitched in his throat, shocked by the sudden, absolute authority in Henry's voice. Anna stood clutching her little brother, her eyes wide with terror, tears streaming down her face, too afraid to even wipe them away. Patty froze mid-swing. Her hand slowly lowered to her side, not because she felt remorse, but because she had slammed into a brick wall she couldn't bulldoze. She stared at Henry, her voice trembling with fury. You're physically blocking me to protect times her asterisk." Henry did not lower his arm. He spoke slowly, as if carving the words into stone. "I am blocking you because I am her husband. You can be furious with me, but you will not touch Audrey. If you want me to be a good son, you have to let me be a decent man first." Patty let out a manic, broken laugh. "A decent man? I raised you from dirt, and now you're giving me lectures on being decent?" She whipped around to face Kevin and Felix. "Do you see this? He's completely brainwashed." I stepped out from behind Henry's arm. I wasn't going to let him stand on the front line alone. I looked Patty dead in the eyes, my voice ringing clear and authoritative. "No one is brainwashed. The truth is just out in the open. You have money. You can take care of yourself and your children. Henry will support you as much as he can. But slapping people into submission, that is not how a family operates." Patty clamped her mouth shut, her eyes blazing red. Kevin opened his mouth to launch another insult, but Henry cut him off with a voice like cracking ice. "Kevin, Felix, shut your mouths. As of today, if either of you utters a single insult toward Audrey, or if you ever encourage Mom to hit someone again, you can pack your bags and sleep on the street." Felix physically flinched, his face draining of color. "Henry, you're taking this way too far." Henry stared a hole through him. "Taking it too far is better than taking a hit." Hearing him say that, a sharp pain shot through my chest, followed by a profound wave of relief. Pain for the red mark on his face, but relief because he had finally learned how to defend his wife, and more importantly, how to defend himself. They say the greatest blessing a family can have is a son who surpasses his father, but in this case, surpassing didn't mean making more money. It meant having the courage to do what was right. Noah hiccuped and called out in a tiny, fragile voice, "Henry." Henry turned around, his entire demeanor softening instantly. "It's okay, Noah. Stop crying. The adults are just talking. You didn't do anything wrong." He looked at Anna. Anna, take Noah next door to Mrs. Miller's for a few minutes. Let him cool down. Anna nodded vigorously, grabbed Noah's hand, and practically bolted out the front door. When the door clicked shut, only the four adults remained, standing around the uncomfortable truth that violence would no longer work as a tool for control. Henry turned back to his mother, his voice exhausted but resolute. Mom, rest for a minute. This afternoon, I am driving you to the new apartment. If you don't want to go, I won't force you, but I am not going to let Audrey live in an environment where she is threatened and assaulted. Patty didn't say a word. She slowly sat back down on the plastic chair, gripping the junk mail flyer so hard her knuckles turned white, staring blankly at the peeling paint on the wall. I stood next to Henry. For the first time since this hurricane began, I realized I wasn't fighting it alone. The next morning, I went to work as usual. It wasn't because I was a workaholic. It was because I needed to maintain my routine. If I took multiple days off, it would only give them ammunition to say I was hiding after destroying the family. I sat at my desk, processed invoices, replied to emails, but my mom's warning echoed in my head. Asterisk. When it comes to the court of public opinion, you need cold, hard proof. Asterisk. Around 4 p.m., Henry sent me a text message, asterisk 6 p.m. at the community center. I set it up. Asterisk I replied with a single letter. Asterisk K. Asterisk. The community center was a modest brick building near the local library. I arrived 10 minutes early. My mom was already sitting in a plastic chair in the reserved meeting room, her posture immaculate, holding a plain white folder. Anna was standing nervously beside her, her face tense, but her eyes looked a little less terrified than yesterday. Noah had been dropped off at a trusted neighbor's house, so he wouldn't have to witness the upcoming cross-examination. Henry arrived a few minutes later, carrying a manila envelope. The faint red outline of the slap was still visible on his cheek, which made my heart ache. He greeted my mom, then looked at me. He didn't say a word, but his eyes promised that today he would see this through to the bitter end. The door opened, and the community mediator walked in. My mom had requested a neutral third party, not to act as a judge, but to ensure there was an unbiased witness to the conversation. Proving this wasn't just a domestic squabble, but a formal addressing of defamation and financial boundaries. Patty walked in flanked by Kevin and Felix. She was wearing a dark, conservative blouse, her hair perfectly styled, her face an unreadable mask of stone. Kevin hovered right next to her, shooting me a look of pure defiance. Felix offered a fake, diplomatic smile that didn't reach his eyes. The mediator sat at the head of the table and opened the floor. We are here today to clarify the living arrangements, financial expectations, and to address some misunderstandings that have circulated within the extended family. I ask that everyone remain civil. Patty didn't even wait for the mediator to finish. She launched her preemptive strike. I'll speak first. The money from the sale of my house is times my time's money. I have the right to live with my son. My daughter-in-law overstepped her bounds, caused a massive scene, put me in the hospital, and now she's dragging me in front of strangers like I'm a criminal on trial. My mom looked at her, her voice smooth and level. No one is putting you on trial, Patty, but you allowed your sons to spread rumors that my daughter was trying to steal your money and holding Henry hostage. I will not accept that. Kevin slammed his hand on the table. Rumors? Did Audrey have the real estate documents or not? What other reason would she have for holding them? Felix nodded in agreement. Exactly. Who steals a mother's financial papers unless they're plotting something? I didn't take the bait. I simply turned to Henry. Henry didn't hesitate. He opened the manila envelope, pulled out the photocopies, and placed them dead center on the table. His voice was calm and deliberate. Audrey didn't steal anything. Anna gave these copies to Audrey for safekeeping because Anna was terrified. Mom was going to force me into bankruptcy while sitting on a fortune, but I was the one who read them. I was the one who confronted Mom. Audrey didn't force me to do anything. Anna lowered her head, her hands gripping the edge of the table, but she forced herself to speak up. It's true. I gave them to Audrey. I was so scared Mom was going to make Henry pay for everything while she hid the money. Patty whipped her head toward Anna, her eyes burning with pure malice. You backstabber! I feed you and clothe you, and you betray me. The mediator immediately raised a hand. Ma'am, please lower your voice. No personal attacks. Henry tapped his finger on the closing disclosure. Everyone look at this. The house sold for $360,000. Mom looked me in the eye and told me she only had $40,000 left. I asked her why she lied. Patty's jaw tightened. She doubled down. I kept it a secret to protect myself. I was terrified you two would bleed me dry. Henry nodded slowly. Keeping an emergency fund is smart. But keeping an emergency fund while demanding your son, who makes $2,800 a month, support 5 extra adults is financial abuse. I am not making enough money to cover this, and I absolutely refuse to let my wife be verbally abused and slandered just because she pointed out the math doesn't work. The mediator took notes. So, Henry, what is your official proposal for the family structure moving forward? Henry didn't stutter. He laid out the terms like a contract. 1. Mom will live in her own apartment. I will send her $600 a month guaranteed. 2. Kevin and Felix are cut off. They will find their own jobs and pay their own rent. They are no longer permitted to live in my house. 3. Anna stays in college. She can get a part-time job to help out, but she will not be forced to drop out to become a full-time caregiver. 4. Noah will be enrolled in the local elementary school, near Mom's apartment. He will be kept entirely out of adult disputes. 5. The anonymous text messages, the edited Facebook videos, and the smear campaign against Audrey stop immediately. Whoever posted them will delete them and issue a public retraction in the family group chat. Kevin exploded out of his chair. You want us to sign a confession? Who the hell do you think you are? Henry stared him down. I'm your older brother, and I am cutting you off. He didn't scream, but the absolute finality of his tone